Then the second commandment, hold up two fingers. This is remind us too, you never make any two things alike. No graven image. God says, don't try to duplicate me. You cannot duplicate an original. God's a duplicator. Now here's a reason. You don't try to duplicate God. God says, don't make any graven image, because whenever you make a carbon copy of something, one of them is unnecessary. That's why God never made any two things exactly alike. There are no two human beings that are exactly alike. Even identical twins. I've got a set of identical twins. They are not exactly alike. God does not make any two things alike. Never. There are no two cells that are exactly alike. No two snowflakes that are exactly alike. God says, I am infinite in my creative ability, and I make no two things alike. If you just look at the person in front of you, look at their ears. The left ear and the right ear are not identical on every human being. There's a difference, honestly. Look at the back of the head, look at the left ear and the right ear. Nobody's left and right ear are identical. There's a difference, I'm just telling you. Your right arm and your left arm, there's a difference. Your right leg and your left leg, no two things. You can have two of them, but no two are exactly alike. I guarantee you, God never made two of anything. If you got two eyes, one of them, you can see better out of one than the other. You know, I'm just telling you. I got 20/20 in one eye and 20/15 in the other eye. I'm just here to tell you, God never ever makes two things exactly alike. He never ever makes two things alike. God says, I won't duplicate myself. I'm a unique God. And I call this the law of the celebration of uniqueness. The law of the celebration of uniqueness, and also limitlessness. Limitlessness. God is an unlimited God. He never runs out of ideas. That's why he doesn't have to duplicate anything. He never runs out of ideas. He never has to duplicate himself. So he says, don't make anything alike. Don't ever make an image trying to duplicate me. And you know why he gives us that specifically? Because when you try to define God into creating an image, God is greater than the image. He cannot be properly depicted in an image, because images are limiting. And God says, I cannot and will not be limited into your image. A mother saw her son intently drawing at home with his crayons, and she said, son, what are you doing? He said, I'm drawing a picture of God. And she didn't want to break his, burst his little bubble. She said, sweetheart, nobody knows what God looks like. He said, they will in a few minutes when I finish my picture. But one of the reasons that God does not want to be depicted in the form of an image is because that is based on our limited perception of him. And God is greater than our limited perception of him. He's so much greater than the perceptions that we have of him. So people, I find, they would draw a picture of God that resembles themselves. So that whites would draw a picture of God, and he'd have their texture of hair, he'd have their type of nose, he'd have their color eyes. And blacks would draw a picture with their texture of hair, with the broadness of their nose, the thickness of their lips. Asians would draw a picture of God. I tell you, if an Asian drew a picture of God, he's going to have slanted eyes. And so it's not uncommon. If an elephant could draw a picture of God, he's going to look like an elephant. We have a tendency to draw a picture of God the way that we see ourselves. But you see, God does not want himself to be depicted in an image, because God is not divisive, and God is God of all. He's God of black folks, he's God of white folks, he's God of Asians, he's God of Latinos. God is Lord of all. He is bigger and he is broader than anything that we can imagine. And so hence God says, do not make an image of me, trying to make a carbon copy to duplicate me. Don't make two of me. Don't make, I'm God, I'm unique. And who I am, I will not take another. Because images define. And the word define, look it up, define means to limit. Whenever you define something, you limit. If you get on a job, and if you step out of your job description, you could get disciplined by a boss because you're not authorized to do this. And they're saying that we have defined who you are and what you can do and what you can't do in this place, and you're stepping out of the definition. You're getting beside yourself. And if you don't come back, then we're going to have to deal with you with some real discipline. So to define means to limit. Remember this statement. The power to define is the power to determine destiny. The power to define is the power to determine destiny. And so he who defines you also controls you. That's why you don't let other people define your world, because they'll always create it too small. So God says, don't try to create an image of me, because you'll define me and you will try to limit me, and I'm a limitless God. I'm an unlimited, infinite being. You cannot limit me into your small perception. We cannot grasp the magnitude of an incomprehensible, inimitable God. God is an awesome God, and he's bigger than anything that we have ever seen. We can't see all of the dimensions of him. You only get a bird's eye view of God when you look at God through any of your experiences or the experiences of your relatives or friends. You still don't get God in his totality. And so whoever defines you controls you. And remember that the power to define is the power to determine destiny. So this is why, if you don't get anything from this, God is saying, don't play God with me. Don't make two of me. Don't play God with me. Don't try to define me, because the power to define is the power to determine destiny, and who he defines controls you. And so God says, you will not control me. You will not define me into this. Don't play God. That's message number one that we get. Message number two is don't limit God in your life. Don't limit God in your life. Do not limit God in your life. You know why? Because God is bigger than your thoughts, and he can do things beyond measures in which you think that they can be done. Sometimes you think that, boy, I've got to have all of this marketing machinery. I've got to have this. I've got to have that. I've got to have that. And all of this takes money. Sometimes God's plan is to give you a grassroots program. And instead of you having the sophisticated program of a corporate organization to have a wonderful cake plan, God gives you a cornbread plan. And you don't understand. You feel like a David fighting a Goliath, and how in the world am I going to compete with them, and I don't have that much. Listen, God's got a plan. He doesn't need for you to be able to have a sophisticated sword that's 3.5 feet long and able to do all of this with all of this heavy armor. God says, take your rag, your little slingshot, and 5 smooth stones, and I'm going to show you another way. I'm God. Don't limit me to a pistol. Don't limit me to a knife. I'll take a smooth stone and a rag and let you sling it out of there, and I'll guide it by my own power and my own strength. You see, a friend of mine, a pastor, was very discouraged. He was trying to believe God for a new building for his church, and he went out and put a bid in on a particular piece of property, and you know, another company came and outbid him. And they got possession of it, and he was all down and depressed. And I said, listen, God, it's not over yet. I said to him, it's not over yet. I said, God has a way. He's bigger than what you are. And that new company that bought that building, they came in, they put a brand new heating and air conditioning system and put a brand new roof on the building. And they held on it for a year and turned around and sold it to this man for $200,000 less than the original asking price. God has a plan. He has a way of blessing you in dimensions beyond your wildest imaginations. Listen, don't limit God in your life. Don't limit God in your life. God knows who you are. Don't limit God in your life. Don't be talking about, you know, God, I'm a black person, I'm this, I'm a woman. Listen, don't limit God. I don't have the education. I don't have the kind of money that those people have. I don't have the contacts. I don't have the mailing list. God, don't you dare limit a limitless God in your life. God is able to do exceedingly abundantly and above all that you can ask or think, according to the power that works on the inside of you. Don't limit God in your life. He says, don't make a little image of what I can do and what I cannot do in your life. Let God be God. I don't know about you, but I love the kind of testimonies where there's no other explanation but saying, but God. Well, they couldn't define you. They didn't see this one coming, but God. But God, but God, but God. God has a way of doing things when you didn't have the reputation, you didn't have the manpower, you didn't have the financial resources, you didn't have the network. God will give your advertising in the mouths of other people that you didn't even have to pay. Money that you didn't. I declare to you in the name of Jesus that when you strip the limits off of God, God will help you to be able to go to school. God has a way of helping you to do what you can do. God will give you favor to be able to have somebody who has access to bring you into dimensions in this life. I cannot tell you what will happen in your life when you strip the limits off of God and say, God, I can believe you. All things are possible to him that believes. Strip off the limits, strip off the limits, strip off the limits in your life. Psalm 78:41, we see that that Israel, the Bible says, they limited God. They limited the Holy One of Israel through their unbelief. They tried to put God in a box. Listen, don't you understand that at some point in history, God has to do something that breaks the mold of history? And God will say, just as soon as you think you have me figured out, I'll come from another direction. He will not go by all of the things you think that you figured out a formula, that you figured out his pattern of how he works. Name it and claim it and blab it and grab it. And God said, listen, I'll let you name some stuff and nothing will happen. So I'll blow your mind. I'll operate and come from the other side and do something you never heard of before. I'll spit in a piece of mud and put it on a man's eyes and open him up. I'll do something you've never heard of before. I'll let a man get out of a boat and walk on water. The kind of stuff you've never heard. Listen, strip the limits off of God. I know that maybe you will be the first one in your family to do such and such. And maybe nobody else got it. Maybe nobody else made it. Maybe nobody else finished it. Maybe nobody else's marriage in your family was able to be held together. But you ought to say, devil, you a lie. God's getting ready to do something in mine. And he's going to. Don't limit God. Don't limit God. Someone has said that trying to fill God's place with an image, it is like blotting the sun out of the heavens and replacing the sun with a 15-watt bulb. Did you know in a 1997 study that was published in the Journal for the Scientific Study of Religion, several psychology researchers found that the image of God, hear this carefully, that the image of God that children tend to have is a reflection of their family experience. That they learn God the way that he was in their family. And if you think about it, people today who have a problem with God grew up in a lousy family. Your family has the ability to introduce people to God. That's why you can't be lazy about your discipline in God for the sake of your children. Because how they see you operate in your home will impact their view and perspective of God, and how you see God will determine how you see everything else in your life. And although your familial experience will help to shape your concept of God, let me just remind you that God is bigger than your familial experience in your family. God specifically said, don't make any graven images. And mankind, we specialize in making images. We try to go to the right school, get the right kind of job, so we can drive the right kind of car. Ladies, I've told you, don't see what the kind of car the man drives, see what drives the man. We try to live in a certain house, in a certain neighborhood. We try to wear a certain brand of clothes, get certain brands of glasses, and wear certain brands of jewelry and associate with certain kinds of people. We try to go to certain kinds of functions just to create an image. It's all about an image. We even have what's called image consultants, because people realize that people buy into images more than the real thing. They will buy into an image, and these image consultants help us to create a certain image that will appeal to a certain demographic. And so men and women end up falling in love with an image. Politicians create images. Companies create images, and we are image worshipers. So we get so caught up in the image that we don't even know what the real person is like. And then when we discover what the real person is like, we become disappointed because it doesn't live up to the image. You're not disappointed by what you find in life. You're only disappointed by what you expected to find. And so the images get us all messed up because of an image. Isn't it amazing that when a woman thinks that she's getting a real romantic man, because while they're dating, he's always trying to get her to sink into his arms. And then when they get married, he's always trying to keep her arms in a sink. Just an image. Women try to act like they're so smart, cleaning up and picking up, and can I get you anything else? And then you get mad, I'm just as tired as you. You bring me another piece of. They fall in love with an image. If you can just create the image. But I love something that Socrates said. Socrates said, be what you pretend to be. Wouldn't our world be just awesome if people would simply be what you pretend to be? Just be what you pretend to be. There's an old African proverb that says, be what you is and not what you ain't. Because when you is what you ain't, then you ain't what you is. Just be the real thing. Just be this, the image that you're trying to project to the world. Just work on being the image that you're trying to project